Want to go for a ride, huh? Time for a trip.
This winter, we have 2 new puppies, Smokey and Goose. With pups, they just run free behind the sled. We just let them chase all the time. They're just learning what it means to be part of the dog team.
And Jaffe's, been leading for 5 years now. He's the one that steers the team around the country. He just turned 7, so.
We raised him from a pup. You were born in a chicken coop.
And we ran him in wheel for the first couple of years, which is the position right in front of the sled. But he was just like, put his head down and lean into the harness and work the whole time, You could tell he was listening, And you could see, like, I would give a command to that leader and he would start picking up on it. You could see him actually turning in that position. And your dog team is only as good as your leader. So, I can totally trust him. We get into situations where we'd be put in jeopardy if we didn't have a competent lead dog, So it's really important to have a dog like this.
Jaffy will make sure you stay right on the good ice, and you get across. And you can't just trust any dog to do that, It'd be pretty scary. We're ready to roll.
Good. Let's go. Ready? Jaffy, hey.
Well, it's one thing to have the ability to plan ahead and plan on being gone for several weeks and plan for an absence, and it's another thing to contact somebody on Thursday morning before Sunday and ask for a pinch hitter. So thank you, Pastor Cathy, she's somewhere back there, for stepping in and doing such an excellent job last week. There was actually a thought, if you're not aware, I tested positive for COVID and spent 2 days just with no voice and just wanting to hide from the world. But Pastor Mark had this idea as well, maybe you could record the sermon and we could show that, because that's not like the next big thing. And so if we were going to do that, we had to make that call by Thursday morning. And I had this thought that maybe I could do it. And so if you enjoyed Pastor Cathy's sermon, you can make sure you thank Pastor Cathy, but also my wife, because Thursday morning she said, no, you're not going to do that. Listen, nobody wants to hear that voice. Nobody wants to look at those eyes. You sound sick, you look sick, go back to bed. So thank you to Pastor Cathy, thank you to my wife for speaking truth. Last year, it was about this, it was just before Labor Day last year when we found out, we were notified that our church's proposal for a renewal leave grant through the Eli Lilly Foundation had been approved for funding. And one of the things that we had planned and included in the itinerary was a family trip. All of our kids, a family trip to Alaska. It's someplace that we've wanted to visit for many years, just Liz and I, but this provided us an opportunity to include our whole family. And it was especially special because we have family just north of Anchorage in the Caswell Lakes area that we were able to visit and spend time with. And so in last February, we went to Indianapolis to our daughter's house there, and we all met to have a visit, but also to talk about this trip and what were we going to do during 6 days in Alaska. And Liz had found a website for sled dog tours near the town of Talkeetna, not far from her aunt and uncle's house, maybe a 30, 35-minute drive. And so she brought up this website for this dog sled tours. And as my family went through it, they got more and more intrigued. We are a family of dogs, and so that was helpful. But then they found the page on the website for the feature of the tours and got to this part. And I don't know if you can read that, but it says, that last point says, romp with puppies in our giant run pen. Well, I don't know about your family, but for my entire family, they said, book it. Any opportunity to play with puppies is a great opportunity. So we booked it, and what I discovered, if you've never done this, it's actually a pretty good deal for the kennel, because what they're doing is they're charging you to come in and socialize and exercise their dogs. So it's a really good deal for them, but it's really a good deal for us too. It created some family memories that we'll never forget. And so we got to spend some time with Alaskan sled dogs. These are not huskies. These are a different kind of huskies. When we think of Alaskan huskies, we think of a particular breed of animal. But when you get to Alaska, you don't see these. You don't see those types of huskies. A lot of the dogs we interacted with ran in the Alaskan Iditarod race. That's a 938-mile marathon from Alaska to Nome. Sled dogs have a long honored history in Alaska and in Canada, as they've been used to move people and products for years and years. We spent time in Denali National Park and discovered that Denali is the only national park that keeps and maintains a sled dog team. That's for transportation and maintenance purposes. When you take care of a 6 million acre park, you have to have the ability to get around in the winter. And so they're the only park that keeps and maintains their own sled dogs. And so on a June afternoon, we met the shuttle bus in downtown Talkeetna, and we experienced dog mushing, and of course, yes, got to romp with the puppies. I don't know if you'd call it romp as much as snuggle, but in the process, it was here and at a museum where I discovered this alternative universe that I never knew existed before. I knew it was there, but to actually learn about it and experience it was completely different. There's this relationship, and we got just a glimpse of it in the video. There's this unmistakable connection and relationship between the mushers, the drivers of the sled, and the dogs themselves. There's almost literally it's a supernatural connection between the two. The mushers and the dogs spend so much time together. And for a dog sled team of 8, they keep kennels and take care of. The day we were there were 78 dogs as part of the kennel. But part of raising them is developing that relationship. And a musher knows their dog so well that when they hook them up and on the trail, they know their tendencies. They can tell when they're starting to tire. They can tell when there might be an issue with an injury. They can tell when they're ready to go, and they can tell when they need to hold back. There's an unmistakable connection and relationship, not unlike our relationship with God. We read this morning the beginning of the conclusion of Paul's letter to the Philippian church. And of course, Paul is notoriously writing this letter from a jail cell. And so it's important to understand that, first of all, that Paul's not imprisoned because he was spreading false doctrine or because he was making the Romans look bad. Paul and every other disciple of Jesus was arrested for preaching 3 words, that Jesus is Lord. They preached it, they carved it into the stone walls of their houses. Jesus is Lord, not the emperor, not Rome, but Jesus is Lord. And that's why he was in prison. But Paul's attitude is independent of his circumstances. He's not laughing at his lot in life, but he's not allowing his lot in life to keep him from his mission. Paul's purpose, his only purpose at this point in his life, is to advance the gospel of Christ. And in this short letter, Paul implores upon the church, implores upon us even today, to a life of mutual service, to a commitment to truth, and what we heard today, a dedication to the work of Christ. So during my leave, I actually reread, I read this book last year, but I reread a fascinating book by a woman named Dr. Noelle Mering, in which she points out, it's a book about our current culture. And she points out that in our current cultural milieu, I've got to slow down and say that word, in our current cultural milieu, we have lost the ability to suffer. We have taken the vernacular of suffering out of our language, because it's almost as if we don't name it as suffering, then it's not really happening. However, as we can all share, as we can all attest to, as we can all witness to, suffering is part of life. No matter how we try to butter it up or put salt and pepper on it. Part of the conflict that Mering points out is that we've come to believe that salvation and liberation is attainable in this life. But it's interesting, and as I was thinking about what Paul is imploring upon us and what we learned from Sled Dogs, there's some lessons that we can learn in our own lives as Jesus followers to doing what we are bred to do. A sled dog is bred to pull a sled, to run as a marathon runner does. And I thought of the words of the Westminster Catechism. I don't know if you remember this, but our purpose in life is to do what? Glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Think about this. As a sled dog is bred to be a marathon runner, we are bred to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And so briefly this morning, here are 5 lessons that we can learn from sled dogs, that they are bred to do. And the first is to serve with not just passion, but enthusiastic passion. See, when the handlers would get out the harnesses and hook up the carts, literally 78 dogs came to life. They knew what was being prepared. They knew what was happening, and there was this loud cry of, "Pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me." I don't know, I never did find out how they decide which dogs to take. But loving God and loving others provides the same opportunity for us to serve enthusiastically from our heart. God made you and God made me with a particular passion in life. And so it's our role to define that passion and serve with joy and enthusiasm. The second thing we learn from dog sled teams is to work, again, enthusiastically as a team. I've never been around a group of dogs that are more enthusiastic about what they do. It turns out that the placement of the dogs in the team is not random. They have to figure out, and we heard a little bit of that in the video, which dog is the lead dog. Which dog can they trust in that number one spot, especially when you're getting into some very treacherous situations, especially when you're driving a dog sled team across ice. Not something I would get too enthusiastic about. I think I'd take the long way around. But you have to trust your team. Every position has a purpose. Our guide was named Chad. He still is named Chad, sorry. But Chad, actually, he's driven two separate teams in the Iditarod. He was actually the Rookie of the Year, his first year. And then second year was he was most improved because he finished 7th, while the previous year he finished 13th. But he shared with us that no dog is ever forced to run. If a dog is tired or not focused, they just sit out. Because forcing a dog to run is actually detrimental to what? The team. It hurts the team. On the trail, you can't function if even one team member wants to go off on their own. Loving God and loving others means it's not about any one individual, but working together to do what? Spread the good news of Jesus Christ. The third lesson we learn is to pull your weight. We can walk our daily walk with Christ and still go about the things that we do every day. But again, it comes back to that basic choice. To glorify God and enjoy Him forever means that we do what we do for the glory of God, not for the glory of ourselves. Let your work speak for itself. The fourth thing that we learned, and I think this is a spiritual gift for some of us. I'm not always good at this, but it's to be warm-hearted. These dogs, these huskies, the colder it gets, the more they thrive. The colder it gets, the more they come to life. Here's the thing. We live in a cold-hearted world. And so how do we learn how to live as warm-hearted people in a cold-hearted world? Even the Bible talks about even those among us who do our best to follow God, to love God and love others. We can become cold-hearted. Jesus said in Matthew 24, he said, because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. He's talking about his own followers here. The love of most will grow cold. But, he says, the one who stands firm in the end will be saved. Stand firm. Be warm-hearted in a cold-hearted world. There are people, I'll tell you what, we could spend the rest of the day going around talking about people we know in this room, and they're sitting here today, who have managed to be warm-hearted in a cold-hearted world. Finally, keep moving forward. Something interesting about what happens on the trail, and every time a sled dog team goes out for any distance, there's a possibility that something can happen. And our guide Chad told the story about a time when he was on the trail, when he got too close to the edge of it, and his sled flipped over. And you know what happens when the sled flips over? The dogs keep going. Yeah. You know why they keep going? Because that's what they're bred to do. And the hardest thing to do, and Chad said when that sled went over, it was all he could do was keep a hold of the sled and to get his dogs to stop. The dogs keep moving forward. Because their instinct as a team is to move and to move forward no matter what. For humans, that proves to be a difficult task. To move forward in our relationship with God when obstacles seem endless and the world around us makes us want to just stop. Oswald Chambers, I read this over my time too. God expects his children to be so confident in him, he writes, that in any crisis, they are the ones who are reliable. Let me read that again. God expects his children to be so confident in him that in any crisis, they are the ones who are reliable. Out on the wilderness trail, and out on that trail, it is cold, it is quiet, it is lonely, and it is you and your team. But peace is achieved by doing what you were born to do, and to do it with passion, to work as a team, to pull your weight, to be warm-hearted, and no matter what, keep moving forward. Paul reminds us from a jail cell today, we're reminded that peace for Jesus' followers is obtained with the same attitude. In the midst of navigating through a cold-hearted world, can our own attitude reflect the perspective and the purpose and the desire to press on, to keep moving forward, to serve with enthusiastic passion, to work as a team, to pull our weight, and be warm-hearted with the love of Jesus?